Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Sorry about a couple of technical difficulties up here. I'd like to tell you the technology is infallible, but we we do have everything up and running now. So thank you for coming. I appreciate it. My name is Joel Everhart. I'm with Lely, North America. And I'm extremely excited to have you guys here to listen to the story from our excellent producers up in northwest Minnesota, Goodview Ayrshires. What I'd like to do is play a short little video for you first, and then we'll kind of get into some introductions, and then I'll hand it over to them to talk about the journey that they've had with their dairy and with their farm. So with that, I'm going to play a little short clip, and hope you enjoy that, and we'll turn it over to them here shortly.
We had a pretty simple operation before. We fed dry hay and grain and didn't have any of this mixing equipment or any of this silage equipment. So when the Leadstone boys sat down with us and were explaining this, I think we can put a vector system in there just as cheap as you can go out and buy your tractor and a mixer and a loader and all this equipment, because I had to do that. I had to buy the equipment. And then I looked at a YouTube and I actually watched the vector system work. And I started thinking, you know, if you can put down fresh feed multiple times, it got to be almost a no-brainer.
Just being able to feed with the vector where we're using a PMR, I think has definitely balanced out the potentials of, you know, acidosis in cows and those kinds of things.
The vector really keeps the barn quiet. We don't have to worry about anything like that disturbing the cows during the milking process.
We've been in here over 9 months now, and I have not taken basically one wheelbarrow or even one shovel of feed off of the lactating cow side here.
What I like most about the vector would be the consistent feeding. The vector is currently putting feed down for the lactating cows of 120 about 14 times a day. And I got that split up between 3 different dumps. The cows enjoy having the fresh feed. They will go to where the fresh feed is getting dumped almost every time. They are cleaning their bunk up more consistently. I am not having nearly as much waste as I believe I would have with a TMR mixer where I'm dumping a large amount at the bunk at one time.
If I don't have to fire up a tractor and load it every day and all this and that, that makes sense to me. Pretty simple operation before. We fed dry hay and grain and didn't have any of this mixing equipment or any of this silage equipment. So when the Leadstone boys sat down with us and were explaining this, I think we can put a vector system in.
So that was a nice little clip, just a little snapshot of some of the products they have there. It doesn't include all of the products, but Goodview Ayrshires from Goodridge, Minnesota. You saw a couple of people up on the screen, but the family consists of Mike and Linda Hanson, their sons, David and his wife, Dr. Ashley Swenson, who don't live on the farm but are integral to the operation. Matthew, who lives on the farm and does quite a bit of the day-to-day work there, and their other son, Stephen, which I believe is still in school. Is that correct?
The vector
Oh, he's finished now. Okay.
Quiet.
All right.
We don't have to worry about
quick little, they probably don't even know this, but I was hired with Lely in April of 2015. Immediately went to work selling vectors and automatic feed systems. My very first sales call was with our Lely Center that services their account, Leadstone, up in Melrose, Minnesota. First sales call was to the Mike and Linda Hanson farm. And we sat at their dinner table and had a thoroughly good conversation. They had a lot of good questions for us. We left. Went, wow, this would be a really unique opportunity up here in northwest Minnesota. I think it was about a month later, we did a tour up to Canada. And Linda and I think David, I think you were along. We went up and toured a couple of farms all the way up there. Your mother was no, there is absolutely no way we're going to have automatic feeding at this place. It is not going to happen. And we went and toured and saw a couple places and within about 5 minutes of being at one of the places that had the automatic feeding system, she's like, wow, we have to have this system.
I think he's exaggerating a bit.
And it was that way all the way back home. So we couldn't have a better ambassador for Lely. This family is incredible what they've done for the for us and for the Ayrshire industry. And I'm very proud to introduce them and have them tell their story. So it consists. Their family is Mike and Linda. And Linda, I think I'll just turn this over to you now, and Matthew, and you guys can work your way through through your story. Matthew, let's give them a round of applause.
You should be on.
I should be on. Okay. Yeah, I'm Linda Hanson, and just a quick introduction. The picture there, our youngest son, Stephen, on the far side there. My husband's father, Lynn, at 88, still spends a good share of time on tractors and combines. Doesn't milk cows anymore. My husband, Mike and Stephen are home taking care of things. They got cows to take care of. What? Oh, okay, forward and backward here. Mike and Stephen stayed home from the trip. They're taking care of things, and our biggest problem right now is the soybean harvest coming up, because we do farm a fair number of acres as well. Myself, and then Matthew is here with us today. Matthew's down here along with David and his wife Ashley with our show cows. We've got some show cows out in the barn here. They brought 6 head down, and they showed yesterday. So that's kind of the family. As it is now. David and Ashley, like I said, they work actually with the Swenson farm, who also has Lely robots, but David stays keenly involved with the operation, you know, via technology, via computers, and trying to get up there as often as he can. Ashley does our embryo flush work. She's a flush vet, and we handle that with her. We live in northwest Minnesota. We're an hour from the Canadian border and an hour from the North Dakota border. And believe me, there's not many dairy cows up there, and it's pretty darn flat. This is just a neat picture of what it looks like in the summertime up there from the area of our barn. And of course, the Midwest is known as the flyover zone. My husband caught this picture one day that kind of proves that X marks the spot. And that's the flyover zone at Goodridge, Minnesota, a winter scene, so that's what it is. Snowmobiles go really fast across that hard-packed snow, believe me. We enjoy that in the wintertime. Our family farm up there actually got started with my husband's family, Lynn, that was in the picture, and his wife Norma. They married and started farming up there in about 1955, 56, thereabouts. Lynn grew up in the area. The top farm site where my husband grew up. We thought it'd be kind of neat to look through our pattern here. The whole family homesteaded in 1904. They started milking registered Ayrshire, or they started milking Ayrshires and then registered Ayrshires shortly after that. Mike and I were married in 1989. I come from a dairy farm in eastern Iowa. I'm an Iowan that immigrated. They call me an immigrant up there yet. But started with an Ayrshire cow, or an Ayrshire heifer as a 4-H project at 10 years old, and here's where I am all those years later. Still thank you to the Ayrshires and the passion that it created in me for the dairy industry. In 1994, we had been sharing the barn at Lynn and Norma's place, and in 1994, this tie stall facility, just 5-6 miles away, came up available. We bought it, moved our cows over there, did some renovations in the tie stall barn, and milked there then from 1994 until we made this decision to build this new facility and moved to that here just a year ago into the new facility, which is actually 2 miles down the road from this. I'm just seeing. So this is actually the 3rd site of the Goodview Farm herd. This is the new facility today. Another farmstead 2 miles approximately back to the west from where we were milking cows. Matthew lives on the place. We actually own 3 farmsteads and houses to take care of. That's a lot of fun always. But this is where we built the barn. It's a little more centrally located to the rest of our land. We farm in the neighborhood of 2,800 acres. We have a little more access to our land for manure handling here. The other site was limited to just a quarter of land. I don't know where most of you come from up there. We speak in terms of quarters, sections, half sections, not just acres. But so this is where we built the new barn on a virgin site, a hayfield, and it's worked out very well for us. Other than now, Mike and I have to get up and drive to work instead of him driving to work. But you know, that's not all bad either. Worked and designed this barn with the help of Leadstone and the Lely people. Some plans that were out there. Found something we liked, and then went from there. It's into the barn. The kitchen area, and then the gray door there, actually, we had a little nook there left, and my husband says, I could use another shop. So that's a shop that will handle our big tractors, will handle our big combines. It's not a huge shop, but it's very nice, and man, it's really handy if you do have to fix something that the tools are just down the feed alley. It's designed so we could literally drive through our whole feed alley from the shop end into the barn and out the other end. If and when, no offense to Lely, but if and when the Vector would not work and we had to get in there with something else to feed cows, okay? We just, you know, we're farmers, we plan for consequences, correct? So that's one of the plans we made. And actually the day we had a power outage and the tractor was in the shop, we couldn't get this door open, so we opened the door into the barn, drove on through out the other end because it wasn't power doors, and we could pick up the generator and away we went. We lost, what, 20 minutes that day maybe is all? You know, and on generator for 4, 5, 6 hours that day. So this is our third site for the Goodview Farms in all those years. I'm going to turn it over to Matthew and let him start talking about some of the equipment and probably some of our cow genetics from here on out.
All right, again, I'm Matthew Hanson. I'm the middle son of Mike and Linda. So this is just a look into the robot room. Right now we're milking with 2 Lely automated robots. Again, moved in September of last year, so we've been just in over a year now. So this is a look at the Lely Vector system that we installed. We had it not quite running the day we moved in the barn, but had it going shortly after we got in. Currently, going into the Vector, we got dry hay, baleage, and then corn silage, along with a protein mix, and then ground corn as well. Right now, I'm down on numbers, going through a kind of a dry period on some of my cows. I'm currently milking about 105 right now. The Vector system mixes feed about 10 to 11 times a day for the lactating herd, and then about once or twice to 3 times, depending on for the dry cows. Usually, each mix takes about an hour to mix. If it was to leave, scan the feed bunk, come back in, and then start mixing again, then start leaving to go dump. It's batch that's it's currently mixing. As well as having the robots, like milking robots, and then the feeding system, we have 2 Lely Luna brushes in the lactating cows pen, and then 1 in the dry cow pen. Keeps the cow's backs clean, helps cow comfort extremely well. Again, cleanliness is inherent, removing that during lactation. So just a little overview on some of the outside activities that we are part of. My dad serves as a leadership council for the Land Lakes, as long as the Farmers Union Board up in the town next to us. And then area development in Goodridge. Linda served as board directors for Ayrshire and has served other positions as well, along with many other things within the community. Me, my mother, Linda, David, all do have judged collegiately, and then I've been continuing to judge afterwards. So this is just a look into the robot room. My mom has judged internationally, Finland and Australia in the past as well. Dairy has been recognized with some of these awards: PDCA, Outstanding Breeder, Outstanding Dairy Family, and then Pennant County Outstanding Conservationist. Some of the cows that we have, stuff we've shown in the past, Minnesota State Fair results, and some of the other things. We take pride in our cows. We show them when we can, stuff that deserves it, and then we've had good results. Right now, and again, just additional pictures of some other ones that we've shown in the past. So we started, like I said, started milking last September with 2 Lely robots with the Vector system, then 2 Lely Luna brushes. Currently milking about 105, 106 cows. Mixed with the Holsteins, we purchased about 35 to 40 Holsteins, mostly first lactation, second lactation, spring heifers from a family friend's farm who they were selling out in central Minnesota. Currently, the cows have probably increased about 7, 8, 10 pounds per cow. Pregnancy rate has been definitely the biggest increase of everything. Cows are settling a lot better, getting out of the tie stall barn. We've been able to actually see cows standing in heats and showing better heats. Everything's 100% registered on our farm. Everything's got papers. We DHI test and classify as well. We focus pretty hard on genetics and continue to try to grow. We pretty much pick our own bulls, do our own AIing as well. Like Linda said earlier, we farm about 2,700 acres land between my parents and then my grandfather. 100 acres going for corn silage, about 200 for hay, which is both for the dry hay and the baleage. and then remaining is for just cash crops, spring wheat, barley, and soybeans. Our plans for the future, just continue to grow numbers, hopefully be at full capacity by about December. Like I said, I was going through kind of a dry period with a bunch of cows going dry and starting to calve again. Remain focused on components, picking up some of the Holsteins. Our components did drop compared to what the Ayrshires had. So from a close to a 4.0 fat, we went down to a 3.5, and it's slowly starting to come back up. And then always focusing on somatic cell. That's a big issue for us, or not to say issue, but a thing we strive to get better at. And again, maintain excellent reproductive efficiency, and again, having cows go into the free stall, they've definitely done a better job getting cows bred on time. So we started, and definitely seen the preg rate go up. We continue to promote our genetics both nationally and internationally, trying to flush as many of our top-end genetic cows. Try to improve that as fast as we can with IVF work and then just conventional flushing. And then working on transitioning from my parents down to my generation with my brother and my younger brother, Stephen. And then possible expanding the dairy within future years. Currently, the cows have probably increased about 7, 8, 10 pounds per cow.
Just a couple more comments regarding transition. We did this because we had boys that wanted to join the operation. They graduated college with dairy science degrees from the U. They were interested in production agriculture. It was a case of more land or more cows, or maybe both, which still we're not entirely done with maybe land purchases as the opportunities arise. Competition for land in the last few years, many of you know, has been extremely strong. This was something we could do without having to compete with the neighbors, for one thing. So we did this because our boys were interested in staying in the business. Mike and I, as much as we might have loved to do this for ourselves, did it because we wanted to help them transition in, and we felt it was time to do that, to jump into the next generation. So we're working on not only the aspect of the new facility, but the business side of it with setting up trusts, looking at possible business structures that would be more desirable to our family operation. We're real proud of the fact we could do this. We're real proud of our sons and the way they've taken a hold of this and helped us plan the whole thing and have shown the responsibility. And I guess that's all I wanted to add to that. The biggest reason here is transition and a passion for the dairy industry and a belief that we can still make it work. Thank you. I guess questions?
Thanks, guys. That's short, sweet, a lot of stuff, but yeah, we would like to open it up for questions, and we are kind of live streaming this, so as if you have questions, let me get back to you with a microphone so that we can get that all nice and clear. So you got one back here?
Working on transitioning from my parents down to my generation with my brother and my younger brother, Stephen.
Thank you for the tour. What's your current herd average, and what are your plans for expansion to more cows?
Herd average as in production. We were about 18,000 when we moved into the barn. Just being in a year, we've just starting to get cows in for a second lactation. We've seen an increase to about almost closer to 20,000 rolling herd average. And further expansion would just increase more cows, probably double in size, go to additional 2 more robots. Again, working on just this past year, we haven't gave it too much thought, but just always have an idea. We built the barn with the possibility of flipping it so we would be able to accommodate another 2 robots.
We could just mirror image it actually and add it. I think our last actually test average was 22,000 between the Holsteins and the Ayrshires mixed. We're definitely seeing a little bit more volume on the Holsteins, but significantly more tests with the Ayrshires. I think as cows totally transition, in other words, they've calved in, they spent a dry period in the new barn because we have a dry cow row in the barn as well as lactate. We had no good dry cow facilities to transition cows, so we added that to the barn. And now freshening in again, we're definitely seeing those cows performing much, much better. And the majority of them are Ayrshires that we have the history with. The Holstein herd we brought in, we don't have a lot of history with them. I mean, we know where they came from and stuff, but they're all also very young cows. And we've got 9, 10, 11-year-old Ayrshires milking in this barn and have done very, very well transitioning. So old girls can learn new tricks really, really well. We're very pleased with how that's happened.
That's short, sweet, a lot of stuff, but yeah,
We
like to open it
went
up
from
for
an
questions
exclusively
and
tie stall, 40-cow tie stall
streaming
barn
this, so as,
where we were feeding only dry grain ration and dry hay, most of which was carried by hand, into this facility. So
got one back here?
when people say, do you really, particularly the Vector, has the Vector really helped things? Well, we made so many changes all at once, literally in a matter of an hour one morning, or 2 hours as we moved cows down the road. It's a little hard to know then. We're finally getting that year in, and I think we can start to see more and more. So that's what we were feeding, so those cows went directly from that kind of facility to a TMR, PMR with the robot situation. The Holsteins we brought in actually did come out of a TMR-fed herd.
Another tie stall.
But another tie stall facility as well. So our cows really made a big leap, not to mention us making a huge leap. But boy, my knees and hips felt better in about 24 hours, believe me. I don't know if that helps answer your question or not.
So, yeah, just a quick clarification that when she's throwing out a lot of acronyms, and Lely is really good at acronyms. So TMR, course, total mixed ration. PMR, partial mixed ration, is what we're putting in the bunk because the rest of the energy they're getting through the robot. So just wanted to make sure everybody understood that. Question over here.
They've calved in. They spent a dry period in the new barn because we have a dry cow row in the barn.
Hi guys, I was just up there a few weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
If you double, will you have to add another vector, or can that same TMR mixer be able to handle two sides?
And the majority of them are
Right now, about 100. The barn holds itself. It'll be 120 free stalls for the lactating cows, 35 for the dry cows, and the Vector can handle that very easily. The Vector itself can handle about 300 cows before we would have to add in another additional mixing robot itself. Right now with the baleage and stuff, my Vector, or the grabbing system that puts the feed into the grabber, isn't running as efficiently as I could make it. Being the first year, I've played with settings on the grabber. There's a lot of stuff that I can do, change grabbing settings, depth of grab, how much it wants to grab at one time, to make that thing run even faster if I want to. Like I said, about an hour it takes to leave, scan, come back, and mix. But no, we would not have to add another Vector if we doubled the barn.
That was one of the questions we asked Lely when we were looking at this potential, because, you know, you're designing the first barn, you're already thinking ahead to the next barn. You know, can this system handle a double facility? They've assured us it can. So it's supposed to. And if it doesn't, we're going to let them know about it.
This is my first sales call.
Yeah. Any mistakes we make, we're going to blame on Joel. No.
So yeah, again, I don't have that Vector running nearly as efficiently as I need to, mostly because I don't have to have it running perfectly. I got it breaking up the baleage when it grabs, just so it doesn't grab too much and dump it into the mixer. So I could even probably cut that hour down to 40 minutes, or once even maybe 35 minutes if I really wanted to, and start trying a lot harder for that.
We do have cutters in our baler, but we could probably improve that system either with a different model or some things that would actually break those down a bit more too, to make it easier to grab and shake it apart. So.
If you double, will you have to add another?
All right, coming over.
TMR mixer
To get my exercise.
two sides?
Right now, about
Well, I know some of your family,
Barn holds itself,
Sherry
it'll be
Newell
120.
maybe.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we happen to just start also on September the 20th with 3 Lely robots. But I was wondering, I noticed you did the DHIA test. So did you get the sampler with it in
Right
order
now
to
with the
take the
baleage and
samples
stuff,
to
my Vector
test,
or the
or
grabbing
did your
system
tester
puts
have
the feed
samples?
into
And
the
if
grabber
so,
running as efficiently
on
as
the
I
software
could make
program
it.
that you use, do you still
Being the
use,
first
like,
year,
we
I
use
played with
PC
settings
Dart,
on the
but
grabber. There's a
do
lot of
you use the
stuff that
same
I can do,
software, or
change
do you
grabbing
strictly use the
settings,
T4C software, or how do you handle that?
We use both. We currently use Scout with the T4C. Right now it's 2 record-keeping systems. I do most of the stuff on T4C. She does most of the stuff on Scout. So if I put something in T4C, I let her know. She takes that and hopefully puts it into Scout.
One of the questions we asked.
We use the Lely shuttles to take the DHIA samples. Currently our DHIA rep goes down, picks up the shuttles, brings them back up for us. I pretty much set them up myself. He brings the bottles for them. I get done testing usually 12 hours is about the max. Done that night, he comes back, we wash stuff up together, he takes the samples, then he ships. Then we actually have another guy another 2 Lely robot farm, about an hour 15 from us, who then, their DHA rep comes, picks them up and takes them down to them.
The 2 testers schedule so that, again, one tester picks them up, one tester delivers them, and we use them over a 4-day period between the 2 herds. And so far that's worked out really well, saved a lot of mileage for some people.
Does your Scout and the T4C talk to each other, or do you have to do it totally separate?
We gotta do it manually ourselves.
Okay, I was
You know,
just curious.
we had Scout bought and paid for. We were going to go with it. We're used to that until I'd like to get to a point where we only needed one system. It would be nice. But in DHI is important to us, particularly with the genetics, the registered herd, and things like that. But we're just a little reluctant yet to totally give it up. Scout does a few things that T4C, I shouldn't say doesn't do necessarily, but that we're just used to, particularly me, you know. So at the moment, that's what we're doing. But I have to take what he enters in T4C and manually enter it in Scout, which takes a couple minutes. Sometimes it's nice to have redundancy, though. You know, he forgets to enter something and I do, or vice versa, and oh, did I do it? Okay, you go back to the other one. We did a lot of redundancy with paperwork anyway before. Now we've kind of let that go, but now we use the two programs. But we're looking at ways to eliminate one of those eventually.
Okay, what do we got? All right, coming back here.
We use both. We currently use Scout with the T4C. Right now it's two records.
The first time that you saw the system, it took you 5 minutes to become convinced. What? Okay, maybe a little bit more, but on which specific topics were you really convinced when you saw the system moving around?
Well, I guess, like I said, I think it took a little bit more than 5 minutes, but you know, initially it was like, you know, you're trying to budget things, and the whole thing just looked like, you know, we had tractors. Tractors wasn't an issue to get, but we would have had to buy TMR mixer. We would probably had to look at, we weren't doing silage in the old facility, so we would have needed to still look at silage and facers and stuff like that, even with if we bought a regular TMR mixer that you did tractor, some of those kinds of things. They convinced us to make this. They were going to tour Canada, some Canada herds anyway, the Leadstone people, and told them along. So David and I went. And I think we decided it didn't, for one thing, pictures made it look a lot more complicated. When you look at some of that and they crane and grab it, it didn't appear as complicated as what, you know, when you actually saw it operate in person. And there's just a lot of things that made sense. I don't know if David's got a couple more comments, because he's the one that went up with me in the first place, the two of us together. The other is somebody had to stay home and take care of his cows, plus, again, you still need a passport to get to Canada these days, and it's just convenient for him and I to go at the time. But since we had, then we pushed some numbers. Joel helped push some numbers, and we pushed some numbers, and in the whole balancing act, it just seemed, if we've got to do this anyway, maybe it just makes sense to do it. We would have probably had to build a commodity shed anyway. So that's what we did. We just put a commodity shed on the end of the barn, in a sense. Now, to be sure, the crane and grabber is a little bit more than just a commodity shed. But I think it's just that it was simpler than what we thought, and the numbers made sense to us as far as what we could trade off for lessening the workload, what we were going to have to purchase anyway to do it. Some of the advantage, you know, when it's 35 below in northern Minnesota, in the morning, which we saw some of those numbers even last winter. It was really nice not to have to open barn doors. And you got to open barn doors with the tractor wagon no matter what you do. Blizzards come and Mike just fills the kitchen. With corn silage in the wintertime, it's not a problem. You know, 4 days later, we don't have to worry about it. You know, that's the beauty of the smaller numbers at the moment. Someday that might not work. But, so that's kind of what those things that convinced us, some of just those things that we put together. You got any comment on that? Or David?
About right.
I was just wondering what the ROI or break-even point is, and on average, how much a system like this is.
You're asking me.
That's kind of Joel's. You know, personally, everybody's got their own numbers they got to work with. We cash flowed this. We cash flowed this at $18. Okay. Now we know what the dairy industry's been doing here, and it's not that at the moment. But I think what they're estimating the return on investment, you know, and what they've talked about to us. You know, we're still pushing numbers around to some extent here too, as we've moved through the first year. But we were convinced it was something we could make work. And it may take us a couple of years before it's really totally balancing out, particularly with the economy the way it is, the dairy economy. I don't know if you got more to add to that or not, but.
No, that's a great answer to that, Linda. There's a lot of variables that take place in that, of course, depending on labor situations at farms and such. But at the end of the day, what we're hearing, and this is in applying as part of an ROI strategy with talking with bankers and lenders and equity positions, we're finding that from a investment standpoint, an equity standpoint, that the feeding system pays itself off very quickly relative to other automated systems, even robots. If we can take a diesel, the cost of a tractor, the cost of a TMR, all of those maintenance things out, and have a system that is feeding more often, getting higher component yields, those things, they all add into creating an environment that pays itself back a lot quicker. And we're talking not 7 or 10 or 15 years, we're talking in the neighborhood of south of 5 years, and in some cases even 3, depending on their situations.
And then there's the intangibles, like, just like the milking robots. You're in town for the afternoon or you need to go away for the evening, you don't have to worry about getting home to mix feed. The feed's getting mixed. It's that same concept there.
You're asking me.
And again, the little things. We don't have to open a door in the wintertime and get the barn all steamy. Everybody's got their own numbers. We don't have to worry about the mud and snow and crap being drug into the feeding alley because we're not driving a tractor in the feed. There's a little bit maybe comes into the kitchen when they bring up feed from outside, but that's not getting into the cows where they're eating. That's easily kept swept out. There's a little janitorial work. My husband jokes that he's a janitor now because he goes in, well, you got to push up the hay. It kind of scatters around as it grabs, so you go in and you sweep it up a little bit more in the pile once in a while and stuff. But so those are some of those intangibles too that maybe you can't put a dollar cost on exactly, but we think are to a benefit.
Add to that or not, but.
Consistency, yeah, and a lot of consistency in the feed and what's done every day. That's good. Mike says, he's never taken a scoop of feed out. He's pretty close. He just once in a while you get a little bit of a hot. We had a little bit the other day. We got a little bit of a hot section in the feed that we did have to clean out of there. I mean, it just happens now and then, especially with corn silage, hot, humid weather. Cows backed off eating a little bit. Got a little. Plus, we went through.
The dry period, again, I was milking close to 110, and I dried off 7, 8 head almost within a week, and I had to adjust my ration, my settings on there to accommodate for the less cows eating, so I did actually end up having to almost clean out a partial of the bunk twice.
But there really is very little waste that's not cleaned up all the time.
And that's a good point. I don't want to take away from what they're talking about, but add to it that with the vector system, you really don't have the amount of feed refusal that you have feeding through a TMR system where you're always overfeeding in order to get cows' consumption, their intakes up. So you're always cleaning out every day. That really doesn't happen in this situation. And when you're talking about growth on heifers, or you're talking about conception rates and consistencies and those kind of things, if we don't have feed refusal as a part of a ration that we're feeding to heifers, then we're actually feeding heifers the way they're supposed to be fed, their actual ration. So we see all those intangibles that pick up as part of the overall strategy.
Just a quick anecdote. The day we moved into the robots, the vector wasn't running yet. So the first day we just spread dry hay, which is kind of what they were getting at the old facility anyway, and dumped their grain on top of it. At home we would feed grain out of a blue feed cart, scoop at a time. So Mike put that down that way in the feed line, but the cows saw the blue feed cart and all jumped into the free stalls thinking they were going to get fed in their stalls. It was really funny. The next day we got the vector running. It took one trip with that vector and then realizing feed was going down there, and they came running every time after that. That's how quick they learned. But yeah, it was really funny to watch the cows go jump in the free stall and say, okay, where's my feed? They figured out to come back out. We had a great transition. The cows transitioned very, very well to free stalls and the headlocks. No problem whatsoever. Particularly the Ayrshires. They were really quick at figuring that one out.
Do we have any more questions?
Absolutely. Ayrshires are the smartest cows on the face of the earth. I mean, I'm a believer. I'm really a believer. They got the occasional one that's just, a little stupider than average, but I think they're a little bit higher level of intelligence than the average dairy cow, but that's where we're at with it.
No bias there at all.
Yeah, no bias there at all. But then they have an attitude to deal with too, they're not mean, they just have an attitude. We love them to death.
You really don't have. Anybody else have anything that they would like to ask them? Oh, we got one back here. Hold on. So you're always cleaning out every day. That really doesn't happen in this situation. When you're talking about growth on heifers.
Yes, in the preparation for drying your cows off, how much has changed from when you did it in your tie stall versus now with the robot?
I guess I leave that up to my nutritionist. He's the one who adjusts the feed tables for my cows for the robot pellet. They started getting decreased at about 40 days prior to dry off. At about when I aim for about 220 days, so 60-day dry period. They started getting backed off on their robot pellet, which in turn will limit the amount of times usually they come to the robot. So usually end up starting to push a few cows towards the very end of their lactation. But other than that, my dry period or transitioning from dry lactating to dry hasn't changed much at all. Besides those little things, again, my nutritionist takes care of most of that stuff.
Definitely easier to back the feed off of them with this system than it was in the old tie stall barn, because even if you're trying to back her off for grain, you know, as soon as she's done, she's reaching for everybody else's, and it got a little more difficult. It's just easier to control what they're getting and bring them down.
Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, hold on.
Absolutely. Ayrshires are the smartest cows on the face.
They can hear you.
I can hear you, but they can't probably.
I'm a believer.
You spent some time talking about your heifers. What do you do for calf raising?
Currently, again, all dry cows, pre-fresh is all at the new location. Cows calve there, calves are born, and actually they're currently being raised in a spare pen that we had, and that we weren't planning at all to really raise calves at. But currently their calves are staying at the new barn until about 50 days. Then they're getting moved back to our old facility where we continue to wean them. We were trying to utilize our old facility as much as we can for our heifers and stuff. Not the best situation, but we have plans to hopefully improve those for our heifers. Calves are just on a
Yes,
grain grower
the
pellet,
preparation for drying your
weaned at
cows
about 60
off,
days with calf starter.
How much has changed from
If
when
that
you
answers
did
your
it in
question,
your
unless you want
tie
to.
stall versus now?
Group pens right now. Just getting one group pen right now. I'm feeding about between 8 and 12 calves usually at one time in the group pen. Not too many issues with any disease or anything going through.
With two nice maternity pens in there, and then so our special needs pen, which is kind of typical in robots barns, we actually had it pretty big, and actually we've got it into two pens. One pretty good size pen right behind them, right by the robot, and then a second one we've got an alley into our utility room area, our clean areas. And in a small pen, we thought, well, that would kind of be a spare. Maybe if you get a couple extra sick cows you need, you can use that. We put 3 small calf tail pens in there, thinking they could calve. We can put them in there for a couple, 3 days, and then we can bring them to the other farm. Well, it worked so well, and then he started letting them kind of group pin in that. All through last winter, the calves did so well, we just kept doing it. Why move them through the cold out there when they're babies? And we've continued to do that. The problem is, just like in anybody that's expanded, you know, suddenly your heifers catch up and overflow what you did have available to raise heifers. So we're kind of at that point. We need to look at, again, doing a little more remodeling of the old dairy barn, maybe for babies and calves, and then maybe some additional facilities for heifers as we grow. And raising heifers has never been a problem for us and has not continued to be a problem with the new facility. Death loss is minimal with our calves and heifers. So far, knock on wood. So that's kind of where we're at. Right now, we'd like to do a job there to make that better, but so far it's working with what we're doing.
Calves are getting whole milk, I guess, that additional information, that waste milk from the robots. Pretty much have cut off milk replacers almost completely from my calves, minus when I take them back over to the other place to wean them those last 10 days, and they'll get milk replacer for the last few where they're getting cut back. I guess since Joel brought it up, the top left picture, that's the vector's right there next to our hospital pen, and then the calf pen, that where the calves are currently getting fed, would be right next to that, just outside the picture to the left.
Another question.
Group pens right now. Just getting one group pen right now.
Main reasons of culling and percentage of culling, and what criteria do you use for selecting bulls for future replacements?
Since moving into the robots, we were in the old tie stall barn. We were just focusing milk components, good, nice, functional cows, good type. Since moving into the robots, we definitely focus more on teat placement. I do not focus a lot on robot-ready bulls yet. I don't think there's enough information for milk speed to really justify for selecting just robot-ready bulls.
Particularly with the Ayrshires.
Particularly with the Ayrshires, yes, since there's less of them out there, not a whole lot of information on them. The Holsteins are getting better. They're starting to show a little bit more information on the milk speed. As soon as that comes out, that will be a big component of it. Having a slow cow in your robot can really cut back time and really hurt the efficiency of your robots. Otherwise, other stuff I select for, good feet and legs, still selecting a lot of type. High components that are what I'm kind of focusing on, especially on the Holstein, since they are what's pulling down my herd average. Positive milk is usually just kind of a given, just kind of trying to focus on that as well.
I want to emphasize, we've got some very, very nice, high quality, highly profitable Holstein cows. The family bought them might be listening as we speak, and they're great cows. We really love them. But they are lower components than our Ayrshire herd is. And so we would like to see if we could bring them up too. Holstein does have that opportunity. They've got some really good high component bulls out there. He asked about culling too, Matthew.
We haven't really culled much in probably the last year, just again trying to get those cow numbers up. Right now, again, it would probably be just higher somatic cell cows we're kind of getting rid of. Cows that udders are getting too deep, the older cows, 5th, 6th, 7th lactation cows, they're just slow in the robot, milk take a long time, efficiency's going down, and finally just need a udder given out.
Again, we were just trying to maintain numbers, and again, anybody that's expanded probably appreciates where we're at. So culling has been pretty minimal this first year, but
criteria do you use for selecting?
How many visits are your senior cows on the average do per day with the robot?
When I left the farm on Thursday, we were averaging 2.7, 2.8. Again, dry. I got a lot of late lactation cows, and I hopefully will see that increase again once I start calving a lot more cows, and again, getting these cows through the robot to a second time. That's kind of what we've seen back in about July. I was down to 2.5 some days, and about up to 2.8. That's kind of see where I'm at now. It seems to be slowly increasing.
There's definitely a relationship. The higher the robot visits, the daily pounds per milk come out just very significantly. You can see it all the time.
As soon as that comes up, that'll be a big component of it.
Okay, any other questions for them?
Having a slow cow in your robot can really cut back time.
One, okay.
You don't count.
Yes,
She's my niece.
So, you know, since Ayrshires have the lowest somatic cell of all the breeds, you guys had a really low somatic cell in the tie stall barn. Has that maintained as you've transitioned to the robots?
Our cell count increased slightly right away. Again, pushing the cows through the first week, I guess I wasn't too surprised to see that.
And when we're talking about increasing, we're talking going from 150 to 200. We're not talking about going from 300 to 500. You know.
We averaged around 100 in the old tie stall barn. We worked really hard at controlling our cell count. We hard prep procedures and stuff like that. We have seen an increase in our somatic cell. Again, some of the culling reasons we haven't been able to cull cows, maybe would be culling some of those higher somatic cell cows, which again, bring it down. Our last DHI test, 3 cows are contributing, what, about 70% of our
three
somatic
cows
cell.
we're contributing 70%. If we get rid of those 3 cows, we'd have been at a 90.
So
somatic cell count. So
it's kind of hard to tell. Again, our somatic cell would be probably about where it was, maybe slightly higher. Who knows if we were able to.
We don't believe the robots have contributed to a higher somatic cell count to any significant level at any rate. It's still well under control, and most people would, a lot of people would kill to have the cell count we do have. I think our last pickup I just got on my phone was 142.
When I left the farm on Thursday, we were
pickup.
averaging 2.7, 2.8. Again,
talking with that low somatic cell, what, I guess, what is the barn designed with? Do you have sand bedding, mattresses?
We have water beds. I bed every other day with sawdust and then sprinkle lime, powdered lime on the back of the stalls. Slowly increasing.
And then what do you do with the manure? Do you have a pit under or a scrape?
Flume pit, pipe, alley scrapers. I got alley scrapers for the feed side and then another set for the stalls that scrape it in, then a flume pit that it pumps into, and that manually pump that into the...
Flume runs across the middle of the barn, scrapers scrape this way, and then scrape this way to the middle of the barn, then flumes it out to the south where it pumps into a pit.
Our cell count increased, then manually scraping stalls 3-4 times a day. Pushing the cows through the first week.
We had bedded in the tie stall barn all the years we were there, also with shavings, wood shavings that we get real locally. Seemed to work well, and it worked for us. So we continued that with the water beds on these stalls.
Okay, I think that's it. They will be at our booth, which, how do I describe where that's at exactly? Right outside the arena building, kitty corner from the coffee stand. You'll be able to see the big red Lely banner. So they graciously will spend a little time with us over at the booth, so you can catch us over there if you have any more questions. They're also busy as they have a show string of their good Ayrshires here this week. So let's all give them a round of applause for being here today.
Thank you for your interest. We appreciate it. A lot of people would kill to have the cell count. I think our last pickup, I guess, got on the phone was 142. Did we do a